Hi everyone, thanks again for joining me on Coffee with Nick. Here we are all about using the fundamentals to find the right companies and using the technicals to find the right opportunities. So maybe very quickly have a quick look at how the market was yesterday. It's actually 8 p.m. over here in Singapore on Tuesday. So almost just an hour and a half away from the US market opening at 9:30. So just very quickly, I want to have a quick look at how the market performed yesterday and some of the standout names as well. The three indices were all green yesterday, but not by a lot. Like Nasdaq was only up by 0.03%, and then as a whole, the market didn't move dramatically, but there was one sector which is the Chinese stocks that had a really bad day yesterday. You can see that on the stock map that I have here. Baba was down, Alibaba was down 7% PDD over 8%, JD 8.5%. It was a really bloodshed day for some of these Chinese concept stocks. I'm not in any Chinese stocks at the moment, so I wasn't too worried about that piece. Amazon had a really good day. This was a position that I entered on Friday. It's actually my second largest position, so quite pleased to see it's actually having a nice little run up towards its earnings report on Thursday, this coming Thursday. Tesla had a pretty good day as well, and it actually released its earnings after the market closed yesterday. So the market seems okay with the earnings report itself seems very positive. The market reaction was neutral to slightly positive. I think it was up something like it's just over 1% after hours after the earnings report came out. So we might have a better idea today how the market is going to receive this earnings that Tesla released yesterday. Facebook and Google's continue to perform. Facebook I think is releasing its earnings on Wednesday. That's tomorrow. So something to keep in mind. Then lastly, there's a bit, you can see this kind of standout green here, Zoom. All right, up 3.8% yesterday. I actually started a position in Zoom yesterday. In fact, I was stopped out of it last Friday only, and then yesterday it continued to show strength. I decided to start a new position again in Zoom. We kind of look at that. We actually look at Zoom in more detail later, because usually for these videos I want to have a quick look at the charts and then maybe focus in on one name to kind of do a bit of a deep dive into the fundamentals of that name, particularly if it's a position I just started or something that I'm considering. So Zoom is something I thought it would be interesting to actually kind of have a bit of a deep dive on it, and why I think it might be poised to do well in over the next couple of weeks. All right, a quick look at some of the portfolio changes for the day. I was down about 0.85% for the day. Not great, but like I mentioned in my tweet here, you can actually follow me, by the way, on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle, Nick Love Coffee. Down 8.85% for the day. This was Friday was a really good day, so there's some pullback yesterday. I was top out of two positions, short and NVDA, both at a slight by 1% plus loss. NVDA actually I got stopped out, and then after it kind of recovered in later part of the day, I actually re-entered NVIDIA, but at a smaller size position. So instead of about 10% position that I was stopped out of, I took out a new position after that at about 5% kind of position size. So I also started new positions in Zoom. Part of the money came from the NVIDIA that I sold. I took up new position in Zoom and also Silvergate. I'm not going to talk too much about Silvergate. It's actually obvious. For those who might be familiar with the name, it's actually kind of a cryptocurrency bank name. We'll probably look at it more detailed, in a later video. But just a very quick look at the portfolio. So right now I have about 11 names in my portfolio. Facebook being the largest at about 16%, followed by Amazon 15%, followed by Pins at 10%, and the rest are slightly under. The rest are all under 10%. You can see Zoom is here, about 5% position. So right now I have about 11 names here. My plan is to keep the number of positions I have in my portfolio to 10 or less. So my current plan is actually to wait. If one of these names I get stop out in, I probably would redivert that money if I plan to use it into one of the 10 names on the portfolio. So not going to trying to get cut it down to 10 names basically, or even less depending on how the market performs this week. And we actually have quite a few that will be having their earnings this week. Facebook, Amazon, I think PayPal as well. So quite a few that will be having earnings this week as well. So something to watch out for. All right, maybe we jump into some of the charts. So these are the 11 positions I have here. TWLO kind of above the 10 EMA here still, but came down quite a fair bit yesterday. Actually, was the outside of the names that I got stop out, like Shopify. This was actually down the most. TWLO still holding above the 10 EMA. So for now, I'm okay. I'm keeping this here in the portfolio. I got a stop just slightly above the 10 EMA. We'll see how it performs. It's kind of a little bit extended at this point, having a nice run up over the last couple of days. MGNI, I got in when it bounced off the 200 SMA. It kind of back at around just above the 200 SMA. I got stop out of this once before, so I'm actually setting my stop now at the low of this day of this candle, right? Which I believe this was the day I will stop out of. In fact, at about here, my previous stop. So now I set it at the low of this day. Let's see how it holds up, whether it gets a bit of a bounce from the 200 SMA again, and maybe it can break this downtrend line here, all right, or get above the high of this day at least. All right, for now, keeping it in the portfolio. This is MELI. Kind of nice run over the last couple of days, pull back a little bit, very similar to quite a couple of names here, all had a pretty good run of 4-5 days. You can see all the green candles here, a bit of pullback, still above the 10 EMA. For now, I think it's this is a name that I really like, and so long it holds above here, above the 10 EMA, I got my stop below here. I'm happy to keep it in the portfolio. NVDA, I mentioned that I got stop out of it earlier in the day. It recovered, it's kind of undercutting and back rally above the 21 EMA. I like to see that. So NVIDIA is the real market leader in the last month until the last week and a half when it kind of pull back. So I feel like it might have more in the tank. So this pullback could be a temporary one. So now that it's back above the 21 EMA, I got my 5% position in it. Waiting to see whether it can kind of maybe rally above this line, which is the low of this day here. All right, so if it does get above that, it will be pretty positive. Okay. One thing you can see here is that this pullback, actually the volume on this pullback is actually pretty on the low, less than half the average volume. So not sustained selling here, pretty low volume selling. So got a good feeling about NVIDIA. We'll see. PayPal, so broke to like, was this a new high? I believe this was a new high. 309.47. Yeah, this was it hit a new high here, kind of pull back below it a bit. We'll see what happens here. It's actually I think I mentioned this before. I like it when big market leaders with few hundred billion in market cap breaks the new high. It takes a bit of buying to do that. Pull back a little bit. We'll see what happens. Kind of like PayPal here. Pinterest here. I got my entries here. Bounce up on the news of Snapchat's earnings report was very good for advertising revenues, digital advertising revenues. So it kind of bounce up here, holding. This is an inside candle here. So I'm holding it for now, but I'm going to keep a pretty tight stop on it, because it got the earnings this week, and maybe it's a name I I'm not as I don't maybe perhaps have a little bit less conviction versus say Facebook. So going to keep a very tight stop on this to see how it breaks up or down after its earnings comes out. Amazon, I talked about this before. This is a name that I really like. I think it will do really well this time, on the back of obviously is e-commerce sales. I need a drink. This isn't coffee. This is actually honey lemon. It's a really hot day in Singapore. So Amazon benefited obviously a lot from its e-commerce growth during the pandemic. Amazon Web Services continue to do well. Amazon Ads, like I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, that's the piece that I think can really supercharge its growth. It's really one of it's a fairly big segment already at over a $20 billion business. I think I've shown that in one video. Its revenues is the combine of Snap, Roku, Pinterest, and Twitter combined, and over twice as large as that. Growing very fast, like 77% in Q1. So, on the back of the advertising revenue growth, I think it can do really well this earnings. So holding on this position, you had a good day yesterday. I got in here somewhere around here. Now I think I'm up slightly about 1.5% or something in this position. All right. Earnings on Thursday. Definitely going to keep a very close watch on that one. The trade desk got a nice boom on Friday as well. Part of that advertising group of companies that kind of after Snap released its earnings went up. Came down a bit today and then kind of bounced back up, holding above this very long downtrend line that I drawn, right, which is kind of nice to see, right? Facebook, same, we got in at various points around here. Now boom up, and yesterday holding its own, similar to the trade desk as well. I think in this name I got a good nice profit cushion of about 7-8% at this point. It's my largest position. Facebook releasing earnings tomorrow, Wednesday, so my eyes will be glued to the screen when the earnings come out. Zoom, my new position, I'll chat a bit more about that, more about its business in a short while. But just looking at the chart here, I got stop out here, on Friday, and then now it actually has undercut and rally above this line, which is one of the earlier lows. I think I drawn it here. There's one here, and then there's this line, this higher line is this low here. So it kind of cut above two lows, as well as the 10 EMA and the 21 EMA. So I like what I'm seeing here. Usually I don't buy a stock if it's below the 200 SMA, making I guess you say a fairly rare exception here. On the back of a rising 50 SMA is very close to 200 SMA here. I kind of have a feeling that it might cut above that. So, and I want to take up position before it cuts above the 200 SMA, right? Hoping I won't get stop out again, but if it happens, it happens. But it has undercut a couple of lows, 2 EMAs here. So I like what I'm seeing on the technical side. Volume was good, above average as well. Higher than when it kind of pulled back on Friday. So Monday was a good day for Zoom. I didn't get in early enough. I got in very close to where the closing price is, just a little bit below the closing price. So hoping for a really good day today. All right, we'll dive more into Zoom in a while. Why I like the fundamentals as well. Okay, Silvergate. Boom. Probably well, Silvergate kind of had when it released earnings, I think last week, it kind of really, a nice run up. This would have been the perfect time to get it. See, this was below the 200 SMA. So my strategy for Zoom is kind of like what I missed out on, SI. So anyway, it's cut above all these SMAs, all these moving averages, pull back a little bit on low volume. This was having a great time to get back in, missed that again, and boom, it went up again, and I got in around here. All right, so I got in different entries, but the cost basis is probably around the closing price or a little bit lower than that. After hours, it pulled back, because Amazon had denied that it was, all that cryptocurrency news that it was actually involved with, saying that it was going to release, it was going to accept Bitcoin and all. So there was a big jump in Bitcoin as well yesterday, and then some of these related stocks kind of had a big nice jump up, and then in after hours they kind of pull back when after Amazon denied the news. So we'll see what happens today. But I like this name. I actually had traded this a long time, quite a while back ago, when he had this nice run up, from here about in the 30s, I believe I bought it, 30s, 40s, and he had nice run up to over 100. Can't remember where I sold honestly, but it was a very nice return last year. So I guess I have a bias for this name. So maybe it's worth checking where Bitcoin is today. It kind of pulled back to about 38,000, and then the news came out that Amazon wasn't going to accept Bitcoin, but then it seems to hold its own after that and didn't, so it's still around right now about 38,000. Seems kind of positive. So maybe the Amazon news won't affect it as much as I think it might be. We'll see what happens today. So anyway, I want to spend a bit of more time today talking about Zoom. Obviously I got into that position yesterday. In fact, I got in last week, got stopped out on Friday, got back in again yesterday. I'm positive on this name, and one of the reasons why is I think Zoom is a underrated name, which sounds crazy because obviously everybody heard of Zoom, especially over the past year. Everybody's been using Zoom, for web conferencing and everything else. But I feel like it's underrated, when you compare that to a lot of other cloud names. You obviously have guys like DocuSign, Cloudflare, they are all been breaking to new highs. And Zoom, actually, if you look at Zoom stock, it's actually been stuck in the 300s for a while. At one stage, I think it might have hit 500 over last year, and yeah, I'm right, it's over 500, 150 over that, and then it came down a lot, pulled back, consolidated, and then kind of settled around 300 plus for a period of time, pull back, and then now kind of perhaps potentially breaking up again. So it's been consolidating a long time, you can see here. So that's over since if you look at this point, we first hit this $300, maybe here big gap up here. So around here it hit this 350, 60 mark. That was in September last year. So if you look at that, this has basically been one big long consolidation, right? Almost 10 months consolidation. And in this 10 months consolidation, it must have at least like three earnings report, and every one of them have been like a killer report where the revenue growth has been out of this world. But despite all of that, I mean, a lot of attention has been on potentially slowing growth because a lot of people anticipate Zoom growth has been because of the pandemic, because of COVID. People stay at home, is the classic stay at home stock. So in that sense, it actually has, if you look at this, you wouldn't have believed it was a COVID stock. Like, it did in this long period of where its earnings was, its revenue and earnings were booming, it actually kind of been consolidating. So if you think, that reminds me in fact of Amazon, where it has benefited a lot actually from the pandemic, but the stock actually consolidated for a long time. Amazon kind of break out a little bit over the last 2 weeks, and so I'm thinking maybe that will happen to Zoom as well. All right, so a couple of interesting articles that I pull out about Zoom. This one is just basically giving a kind of overview about Zoom and why everyone is talking about Zoom. All right, so this was its Q1 earnings that it released on 1st June. So I think the next earnings will be coming out something like 31st August or 1st September. So revenue rose 191% year over year. So obviously a lot of people kind of discount this a bit because a large part of that is because off the back of the pandemic, the revenues and obviously user numbers went up a lot, but adjusted net income surged 590%. Whoa, how often do you see that number? All right, this is interesting, and I got a chart to show some of this. This is about how obviously a lot of people use the free Zoom version, so a lot of consumers, individuals will use it, but Zoom has been gaining larger customers, enterprise customers. So that's pretty interesting. We'll look at it in a bit more detail, but just remember some of these numbers here. Don't have to remember that. I got it on chart in the next tab. So interestingly, in the Q1 earnings, it also raised its full year revenue guidance to about 50 to 51% from the original 42% to 42 to 43%. It also adjusted its earnings to 37 to 8% growth compared to the earlier forecast of just 7 to 9%. In fact, that's pretty crazy, right? It's like, originally estimated this 7 to 9%, and then later they adjusted to, like 4 times as high. And then, in fact, you got a nice jump in Zoom initially after that, right? I think, did they? Oh, not much, actually. They probably released around here. Yeah, actually, they. So around here, it releases earnings. Then you got a nice little price appreciation, but now it kind of pull back like half of that. So maybe this now is finally kind of perhaps setting up to run up again. Right, because this is really some crazy numbers and increased guidance, right? Like if you actually increase your guidance for your earnings by 4 times, it shouldn't just be we shouldn't be seeing just this, right? Let alone pull back half of that. Okay, so yeah, obviously big news of its acquisition. We'll talk about that a bit more of Five9. But basically, like what I mentioned, a lot of concern that investors have is about where is Zoom's growth going to come from, because it obviously a lot of people stay home, they started using Zoom, but once the pandemic kind of tapers down and people go back to the office and things like that, then what's going to happen to the growth? A lot of free users out there, but where are the paid users going to come from? So there's a lot of concern that investors have around that. So to answer that question, so one piece obviously is there's been a move of increased enterprise customers. So originally you obviously have a lot of small individuals who are using it. Perhaps somebody in the office uses it, the free version with another colleague. But gradually, as video conferencing become more and more mainstream, work from home, remote work, all of that has kind of taken hold. Zoom actually has started to see a growth in the enterprise customer segment. So if you look at this chart, customers generating over 100,000 in the trailing 12-month revenue. So from Q1 to and then to Q1 of this year, from last year Q1, that's 160% growth in terms of the number of customers generating over 100. Okay, so and that's like from 700 over enterprise customers, boom, to almost 2,000. Big growth there. Customers with more than 10 employees, similarly, a major jump there as well. So what is clear from here is that one piece of the continued growth is not just going to be in terms of users, but more importantly, revenue as a whole from enterprise customers. So that's going to be contributing to revenue growth. One large piece of that. Then I look at this article from Beth Kindig, whom I respect a lot. She talks about this is article from 3rd of June, so maybe 2 days after they released their earnings. She talks about in the earnings report, in the earnings call, Zoom talk about 2 places where where they see their growth is going to come from. One of which is Zoom Phone, which is really Zoom has this product that they released in 2019. Is actually for the telephone, a cloud calling system for that company, for enterprise, right? So right now at the end of, so I think they started selling probably around September 2019, and at the end of December last year, so about maybe 15 months, they got to about 1 million seats of Zoom phones. So there's seats in the so like a company, if they have they could have 50 seats or 100 seats depending on the size of the company. So total they got about 1 million seats at the end of December last year. By the time 1st of June came about, so maybe about 5 months, 6 months, roughly 5 months, yeah, they got to 1.5 million seats. So 15 months to get to the first million seats, and then 5 months to get to the next 500,000 seats. So obviously the growth is accelerating. and we'll see whether if that continues to hold. So that will be one major piece of information people will be looking out for in its next earnings, is whether Zoom phones, not the video conferencing itself, whether that would actually continue, the growth will continue to accelerate. So Zoom phone is one piece of the puzzle, and then the other piece of the puzzle is actually the international growth. So the companies combined APAC, EMEA kind of revenue growth 288% year on year to approximately 34% of revenue. So in fact, one third of, slightly over a third of the revenue come from international growth outside of the United States. All right, so I'm going to kind of chat a bit more about Zoom phone, because that is clearly where Zoom itself sees what a large part of its continued growth will come from. And interestingly, obviously, there's Zoom couple of just maybe earlier in the month, they announced the acquisition with Five9, which is actually a software for the contact center, right? So I kind of dig around some information, and in this article from maybe about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, at this website nocheater.com. So they talk about Zoom, where does its continued growth will need to come from. So they mentioned 4 key areas. So interestingly, the 4 key areas is Zoom as a platform. So this one everyone talks about that all that. You need to have a platform, you need APIs, etc. Not going to be a single kind of software for single use right now, but you really need a platform and other people build on top of your platform. So I'm not going to talk about this too much. But here, the continued growth of Zoom phone, it mentioned this, all right, that will need to come from, and in the earnings call, Zoom itself talk about that. So that here, interestingly, in the third point here, they mentioned about the contact center, and they say contact center as a service represent an over 50 billion total addressable market that's growing, and Zoom's biggest needle moving opportunity. To date, the company has been on what it might be doing here, but Zoom's last earnings call, Yuan, who's the CEO, hinted that we might see something on its upcoming Zoom. So will we see Zoom come out with a Five9 killer? So this was maybe 12th of July, So part of the thinking by this author was that Zoom, obviously contact center is going to be largely seen as an area that it needs to focus on to grow. And Five9 is actually a market leader in that segment, the contact center segment, So this, in fact, the idea here was that Zoom might have to compete against Five9, right? So then if you look at number 4 set area where it needs to kind of focus on to grow, right? 4 key areas for growth. 4th one was about acquisitions, and it mentions like given its market cap, it could and eventually need to do something bigger. The contact center space could be an area where it could make a bigger acquisition, get some technology names like UJet and Unifone. I don't know these guys, right? Could also take out a company like Fuse, etc. So, but my guess is these are pretty small companies relative to Five9. So I think what the author kind of didn't expect is that Zoom will knock out, 0.3 and 0.4 with one single acquisition, taking out the market leader Five9. So now it has a fantastic opportunity to grow both in the contact center space and perhaps leveraging on the contact center space to get to new enterprises that is actually not part of right now. So Zoom phone is clearly for the whole enterprise, but and in certain enterprises, depending on the nature of the business, the contact center could be a large part of the number of seats, but because the contact center has more specialized needs, they tend to use something like say a Five9. But if Zoom is able to say, hey, use my Five9 software for a contact center, plus we have this bundle of for Zoom phone for the rest of the enterprise, that could make it a lot more attractive for enterprises. And that's not just me saying that. So if you look at some of these tweets from people who are obviously been thinking a lot more than I have been when it comes to Zoom and Five9 and what it could actually mean. This one from John Ma, who's, I think if I'm not wrong, like a VC. Yeah, previously VC. So anyway, so let's see what he says. All right, I'm going to open up him. So he talks about why Zoom and Five9 will really be a game changer, right? Because it grows its TAM, the total addressable market, from 62 billion to 86 billion. Zoom was sending phone customers to Five9, contact.desk, etc. But now Zoom can capture this, all of this, value, right? So big thing for it, increasing the total addressable market. Second is Five9 itself is a beast. Is growing fast. And a whole bunch of enterprise customers as well. So you can see some of the information here. How 83% enterprise as percentage of its last 12 months total revenue. So for Five9, 83% of its total revenue comes from enterprise. So clearly, Zoom wants to grow its enterprise revenue. Zoom wants to grow Zoom phone revenues. Zoom wants to grow contact center revenue. With the acquisition of Five9, it actually helps in all three of them. All right. Then this tweet by Gerard Slipper. All right, he talks a bit more in details of why this acquisition by Zoom, makes so much sense. All right. Is there something that I can focus on very quickly? Oh, this is interesting. So Zoom Phone was thrust into the spotlight as a toddler and held up. It is already at 1.5 million seats. We saw that earlier. It took RingCentral, who is one of the market leaders in that space, that's competing, enterprise, cloud calling systems. It took RingCentral over 18 years to reach that milestone. So Zoom is really Zoom and Zoom Phone is really kind of exploding even in that enterprise space. It's easy to see how this meaning the acquisition of Five9 could turbocharge Zoom's growth. Many of the hundreds of millions of free users are paying for a business phone plan they already use less than Zoom. If Zoom Phone replaces those plans, Zoom premium license go wall to wall to every company, to every worker in a company. This could be more about Zoom Phone itself. And then here it actually talks about how the Five9 will actually fit in. So contact center software is often bundled with enterprise phone systems. So Zoom Phone is the enterprise phone systems. Contact center software, which Five9 is often bundled with them. Right, tight integrations are valuable. For example, a contact center agent often calls other folks internet troubleshoot. Contact center is its own channel, blah blah. So in a battle for 500 plus seats, enterprise telephony deals, contact center is often a meaningful consideration, right? So alright, this will have taken Zoom years to build its own. So with Five9, it can quickly come to market with a full stack solution. Blah 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 blah. Okay, I won't go through all of that anymore. But long story short, kind of a lot of smart people feel like this is a game changer, for Zoom, the acquisition of Five9. Alright. So obviously, when it comes to acquisition like this, the market will have different voices. There'll be some people saying this is a game changer. There'll be other people saying Zoom is overpaying, etc., etc. So typically, what I like to do is kind of figure out from the chart itself, not so much what people are saying, but how the market is actually reacting to that news. So this was the day that Zoom actually came out with the news of the acquisition. I think that was the 19th of July. All right, you can see by the high volume bar. Obviously a lot of buying, a lot of selling going on there. Dip below, came back up. So I drawn two black lines here. One to the top of the high of this day, this candle, and one is the low of this candle. So if you think about it, the market kind of got hit by this news of this acquisition. Different people have different ideas what this acquisition will mean for Zoom. Some people feel like it's positive, some people feel like it's negative. The people who feel it's negative start selling, the people who feel it's positive start buying. And the market kind of priced this news in, all right, on this day. And this is the high and this is the low. So what I typically like to see is, after that day, the news, with the, a lot of people kind of making the assessments based and then doing their buying and selling of the stock based on that. I kind of like to see where the price trends after that day. Does it break upwards from that day or does it break downwards from that day? So from that point here, if you see Zoom's price, it actually kind of pull back a little bit, up a little bit and then pull back down a little bit. Not much, but stay within this, two black lines that we drawn from the day the acquisition hits the market. All right. And then on Thursday, it kind of boom, up it went, and then bang, on Friday, it goes back into that two lines. All right. Then on Monday, yesterday, it kind of break out of that again, and this time it cuts over and stays above both the 21 EMA and the 10 EMA, as well as this line that I drawn to a earlier low. think I shown that earlier. Probably this this low here. So I feel like this is the market giving its judgment, saying, okay, all right, you bulls can have your say, those bears can have their say about this acquisition. At the end of the day, the market is making up of hundreds, thousands of participants who then kind of cast their vote with their money, right? So, and the money seems to be saying, yep, we there was a few days of indecision, and then bang up, kind of upwards. The market kind of seems to be, at least at this point, from what I'm seeing here, is saying that we like this acquisition, and in my opinion, like what I shown earlier, from all that information that I shared, Zoom has a lot going for it. The market is concerned. The market is Zoom's revenue earnings is not a concern to up to this point. What the market is concerned about is where is the continued growth going to come from, and what Zoom has, and what you see in some of these articles. The big things that people talk about are enterprise sales, Zoom Phone, that is the enterprise phone system, so outside of its core video conferencing software, plus contact center software, plus acquisitions. So the idea is that Zoom's growth will have to come from these areas. And with the acquisition of Five9, Zoom's have actually helped to kind of say this is our roadmap for moving it along these few areas for continued growth. And I think the whole acquisition to me sounds very strategic. That means, in my opinion, it should be less about looking at the numbers in terms of, say, hey, is Zoom overpaying a little bit more, a little bit less for Five9? What is the valuation of Five9? Versus its EV, etc. To me, yes, those are important, but not as important as as does this acquisition fit in with Zoom strategically. And because if you think about it, this acquisition will only close, say, in second half of this year, and then with everything else, this acquisition will make very little impact on the actual Zoom numbers for the next 6 to 12 months, right? It probably be more like 12 months before it, or at least 9 months onwards before it really can impact the numbers in any sort of meaningful way. So from this point to that point, say 9-12 months away, really what really matters is what is the market's perception of this acquisition. And in my opinion, this would not come down to has Zoom overpaid by $1 billion or $2 billion for Five9, but rather be has Zoom kind of really figured out a roadmap for growth, and does this acquisition fit into that roadmap? And kind of based on what I looked at earlier and what I shared, I feel like yes, Zoom has kind of answered those questions, and the market's initial reaction seems relatively positive on that. Where I think really it get really positive is that if Zoom kind of price manage to get above this 200 SMA and say over the high of this pivot here, that would really be very positive. All right, I'm going to draw a line here so we remember that. Go mark that in blue. So, and if that happens, I probably want to kind of add to my current Zoom positions. Right now it's about 5%. We'll see how the market performs, this couple of days, this week, and whether the market holds up well, how my other positions perform, whether I can stop out anything else, etc. And if I got cash and Zoom performs well, upwards here, then definitely this is a position I'll consider adding to. All right, I hope this dive into Zoom and where I think the growth can come from is helpful to all of you. And if you felt that this was helpful and you enjoyed it, please help me to like and share this video and smash that subscribe button. All right, thank you, and I'll see all of you again on Thursday. Bye.